The day had started out just like any other quiet routine. I was alone at the house, a rare moment of peace when everything else in life seemed to be rushing around me. The air felt cool as I opened the window, letting the soft breeze drift in. My stepfather, Tom, had been away for the past few days on a business trip, so it was just me, the house, and the ticking of the old clock in the living room. I never thought much about how my life had settled into such a predictable rhythm. My husband, Peter, was always working, leaving me to fill the days with whatever I could. It wasn't bad. I didn't mind it, but there was always this nagging feeling that something more was missing, that maybe I had let my life become too mundane, too predictable. But today, as I was finishing my lunch, I heard the familiar sound of a car pulling up outside. I looked out the window, surprised to see Tom's car. I wasn't expecting him for at least a few more hours. He must have come back early. I stood up quickly, smoothing out my dress and walking toward the front door. I opened it, and there he was, looking slightly disheveled from his long drive, his usual easy smile replaced by something more serious. "Hey," he greeted me, his voice soft but full of something I couldn't place. "I hope I didn't catch you at a bad time." "No, not at all," I replied, stepping aside so he could come in. "I didn't expect you for a while." He nodded, his eyes flicking to mine for a brief moment before he lowered them. There was an odd tension in the air, but I couldn't figure out why. I'd known Tom for years, but something about his presence today seemed different. He seemed distant. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to break the silence that lingered. He nodded again, but there was an air of hesitation around him. "Yeah, everything's fine," he said, a little too quickly. "But there's something I need to talk to you about." I couldn't help but notice the way his hands were clenched at his sides, his posture stiff as he stood there in the doorway. His eyes finally met mine again, and the weight of his gaze made my stomach flutter in an uncomfortable way. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice softer this time, sensing that this was more than just a simple conversation. Tom took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for something difficult. "It's about something that's been on my mind for a while now. I've been thinking a lot about it, and I need your help." I looked at him, confused. "My help? What do you mean?" He stepped into the living room, motioning for me to sit down. I followed him, feeling a strange mixture of curiosity and unease. What could he need help with that required him to act so serious? Tom sat down across from me, running a hand through his hair. He seemed almost uncomfortable, fidgeting in his seat, as if the weight of whatever he was about to say was too much to bear. "I don't know how to say this, but it's something I can't ignore anymore," he began, his voice steady but tight with emotion. "I've been feeling a lot of things lately, and I think it's time I came clean." I felt a knot form in my stomach, my instinct telling me that whatever was coming next wasn't going to be easy to hear. "What's going on, Tom?" I asked again, this time more urgently. "You're scaring me a little." He looked at me with a mixture of guilt and something else, something I couldn't quite name. "I've been feeling trapped," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Trapped in a way that I can't explain. And it's not just about work or anything external, it's about us, about the way I've been feeling." My heart raced and I leaned forward. "What do you mean by US?" I asked, the question hanging heavily in the air between us. Tom exhaled slowly, his face reddening slightly. "I know this might sound strange, but I need your help with something. It's personal, and I've been struggling to figure out how to ask you. But I can't keep this inside anymore." The air seemed to grow heavier as his words settled between us. I didn't know where this conversation was going, but whatever it was, I could tell it was going to change everything. Something was brewing underneath the surface, and the tension was palpable. I need you to understand," he continued, looking away briefly before meeting my gaze again. "I need your help with something I don't know how to handle alone. It's not easy to say, but I need you to trust me." His words left me breathless. What could he possibly be asking for? What was going on inside his head? The unsettling feeling in my chest was growing stronger, and I couldn't shake the sense that this conversation would take a turn I wasn't prepared for. The room seemed to close in around us as I sat there, waiting for him to continue. Tom's words had already left me on edge, and the way he kept looking at me, his gaze unwavering, was making my stomach churn. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I had always trusted him, relied on him in some ways, but now I wasn't sure what to think. "I know this might sound strange," he began again, his voice softer now, like he was trying to find the right way to say it. "But I've been feeling confused. There's something I need to ask you. It's personal. And I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but I can't ignore it anymore." The tension in the room was unbearable. I felt my heart race in my chest, and my thoughts scrambled, trying to make sense of what he was saying. He had always been calm, collected, and steady, but right now, he seemed anything but. I could feel the gravity of what he was about to say. "What is it, Tom?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. "What do you need from me?" He paused for a moment, as if collecting his thoughts. His hands were resting on his knees, but they were clenched, his knuckles white from the pressure. I felt the weight of his silence in the pit of my stomach, and my unease deepened. "I don't know how to explain this," he said finally, his eyes flickering to mine. "But lately, I've been feeling like something has shifted. I've been seeing you differently. And it's not just the way I've seen you before. It's more. It's deeper." I couldn't breathe. I could feel the blood rush to my head, my thoughts spinning out of control. What was he saying? This wasn't like him at all. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to process his words. He had always been a father figure to me, someone I respected and cared for, but what he was saying now was beyond comprehension. I stood up abruptly, my hands shaking, my voice trembling as I tried to make sense of everything. "What are you talking about? You can't. This isn't right." Tom's expression softened, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made me feel like I was in over my head. "I know it's not right," he said quietly, "but it's how I feel. And I've been fighting it. But I can't anymore. I need you to understand that I don't want this to affect our relationship. But I've been thinking about it for so long, and I'm lost in it." I backed away, my chest tightening with panic. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, as if I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream at him, tell him that he was wrong, that this wasn't something I could handle. But instead, I found myself standing there, completely paralyzed, trying to understand what was happening. "Please," he pleaded, his voice softer now, almost desperate. "I know this is wrong, and I don't expect you to feel the same way, but I need you to at least understand where I'm coming from." His words hit me like a wave, and suddenly, everything felt like it was spinning out of control. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. This wasn't what I had ever imagined our relationship could be. I was shaking, my hands trembling as I tried to steady myself. He was still looking at me, waiting for a response, but I couldn't find the words. "I don't know what to say, Tom," I whispered, my voice barely audible. This isn't what I expected. You've crossed a line. I don't know what to think anymore." He nodded slowly, his face filled with guilt and regret. "I know," he said quietly. "I know I've crossed a line. And I didn't want to. But I can't take it back. I never meant to make you uncomfortable." I turned away, my back to him, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I needed space. I needed time to think. This was too much, too fast. I had never expected anything like this, and now I was caught in a web of confusion and fear. Tom stood up, but he didn't approach me. Instead, he took a step back, his shoulders slumped as if he realized the gravity of what he had said. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I should have never said any of this. I never wanted to make you feel like this." I felt a surge of anger, but it was quickly overtaken by a wave of sadness. I didn't know what to do. Everything felt wrong. And yet, part of me couldn't deny that his words had stirred something within me. Something I didn't want to acknowledge, something I wasn't ready to face. "I need you to leave," I finally said, my voice firm, but even I could hear the tremble beneath it. "I need you to leave, Tom. Please." He didn't say anything. He just nodded, his face etched with regret, before slowly walking toward the door. I heard the faint sound of the door closing behind him, and for a moment, the silence in the house felt like a suffocating weight. I sank to the couch, my head in my hands, my thoughts a blur of conflicting emotions. What had just happened? Had everything changed so quickly? The world I thought I knew, the relationship I had with him, felt like it had been shattered in an instant. The door was closed. He was gone. But the question still lingered in the air, unspoken. Would things ever be the same? And if they weren't, how would I ever move on from this moment? I didn't know the answers. All I knew was that everything had changed, and I didn't know where to go from here.